Tyneside riot, the Prime Minister and Home Secretary call for a special report. Police tactics, there's praise and criticism. And the clean-up under the threat of renewed violence.
The riot was triggered by last Friday's crash in which two car thieves, 21-year-old Colin Atkins and Dale Robson, who was 17, died while being pursued by police. From Meadow Well, Chris Eakin reports.
This evening, the rioters' work is on show for all, and it's emerged today that the writing was on the wall as early as yesterday afternoon. The tension which led to this mess began with a street collection and then a party in aid of the two local car thieves who died in the high-speed crash at the weekend. And it was this scene at shortly before 10 o'clock which effectively confirmed there was going to be a riot. Half the estate was blacked out by an arson attack on an electricity substation. And then came the first deliberate test for the police and fire brigade. A youth club in the heart of the estate was set on fire by some of the very youngsters for whom it was meant to serve. Again, the message was clear. The fire brigade and police decided to let the building burn rather than fuel the riot. And the rioters finally took control of the centre of the estate by chopping down trees with chainsaws. Not content with that, gangs of young men and women then set fire to several other buildings. An entire warehouse for building supplies was destroyed. Right in the heart of the chaos, a shop was another target. An ambulance and fire engine went onto the estate, but only with an extraordinary police presence. In general, though, the police stayed off the estate, preferring to monitor events from a helicopter. Unknown to the gangs, police riot squads were being drafted in from other divisions and were being briefed at North Shields police station. Some phone lines into the station had been cut off by the rioters, and there was a heavy police guard for fear of attack. When the riot squads eventually did move in, more than 4 hours after the trouble began, there was surprisingly little resistance. It took a mere 20 minutes for the police to move through the estate, slowly recapturing lost ground. But there was still some disturbing talk.
I think it's good in a way. It'll teach the police a lesson. It deserved to happen that, like the police. If they'd never done that like that, nothing would have happened.
So you're saying this is entirely because of the two youths who died?
Yeah, totally.
And what about your friend? What do you think of it all tonight?
Just the same.
But why are you both reluctant to show your faces?
Because I didn't want to have nothing to do with me, like.
I support the lads. I mean, good luck to them, you know what I mean? Good luck to the lads, because the police do no but hassle them. It's as simple as that. They do no but hassle them lads, mate.
We've gone in forcefully and determinedly to retake the area. We haven't gone in aggressively, but in a forceful way which would ensure the minimum of risk to other people living in that area.
There are, of course, many locals who are deeply upset by the violence, but as their estate began to look like a science fiction film set, they kept their views to themselves, too scared to talk, at least until the comparative safety of daybreak.
The night's violence, but others supported the rioters' actions. All agreed that the death of the two car thieves at the weekend had been the spark which set Meadow Well alight. Adrian Pitches reports.
Streets littered with broken glass. Almost all the shops on the estate broken into and their limited contents, a microwave, alcohol, even packets of tea bags looted before the shops were burnt out. The owner of the takeaway on the corner of Avon Way escaped with his life, but nothing else.
I've got nothing left. That's all I'm wearing. All my belongings burnt. Everything is gone.
The estate's community centre was the first building put to the torch. It was closed because of council cutbacks, removing a valuable facility for the estate's youngsters. Now it will have to be demolished.
There's nothing at all for anyone to do on the estate, you know. The government rate cap and the local councils had to close the community centre down there. And that's added to the problem. People's got nowhere to go, you know, the local community, the youths and everything on the estate.
There's nothing to do, nothing for the kids to do. No places for them to go, no man.
Oh, that's why they're all doing crime. I mean, 10-year-olds and all that doing houses.
Aye, that's right.
I mean, if there was something like, I mean, that club used to be good, everyone used to go there and that, but just went all
like
downhill.
Things, day things and all that, but
like,
there was
activities taking them out, doing different things and that, they'd be all right, you know, wouldn't be crying.
It's all mindless of it. Yeah, what can you say, like, you know, they're blaming these two kids, but...
Do you think it was just an excuse?
Well, I don't want to say too much, you know, because, I mean, I live on the estate and I don't want my windows pulled up by a bomb.
I live at the top of Tunbridge there, right by the park. I couldn't go to sleep till 4:30 this morning. Nothing could do about it. And I reckon there's some more trouble tonight again.
And if there is further trouble on the estate, many will be backing the young people involved.
Well, like I say, I back the lads all the way. Because they're not going to harm the residents at this estate. It's just certain people, when they come in, man, they think they own the place, like the police. You know?
What's the difference between a joyrider and a car thief then? How do people regard the two types?
Well, a joyrider takes a car, races about the streets. These don't take the cars, do a job, and dump the cars.
So people don't like the joyriders, but they think the car thieves, that's fair enough?
I think they're okay. I've got no problems with them.
Many blame the police for the North Shield's car thieves' deaths. And the 40 bouquets at the scene where Dale Robson and Colin Atkins died when they crashed a stolen car underline the depth of support in North Shields for the car thieves.
They're not after the residents, they're after the policeman.
But what sort of an example is it to the Bends to see people putting up barricades and setting light to community centres?
My Ben's one bed. Then I took the wife out and let them go away, you know? So, like I say, if they do it tonight, good luck to the lads. That's all I say.
Would you like your kids to be car thieves too?
Well, I'm not saying. I've got a lad and a lass, and my lad, he grows up, he can do what he wants.
Well, you can't regard joyriders as heroes, they're criminals and that's it, you know? It's just tragic what happened, and they're blaming the police for what happened, you know?
It's clear that the police must now defuse the strong feelings which have built up against them on the Meadow Well estate. And from the attitude of many residents, it would appear that it's going to be a tough task.
Last night's riot has attracted both criticism and praise. They've been commended for ensuring the safety of the public, but others want to know why they waited 4 hours before moving in. Beverly Thompson reports.
If the police had a maxim last night, it was to contain and not to confront. For 4 hours, officers monitored events from a distance. They took charge of all emergency calls and escorted fire crews and ambulances. Senior officers say it took time to muster the manpower and equipment required to move in to finally break up the disturbance. Officers in riot gear took control in the early hours of this morning. They sealed off parts of the estate where the youths were congregating. 4 people were arrested. There were no reports of any injuries to the public or the police. There's been praise and criticism for the way the police handled the riot. Leading academics say the softly approach averted an escalation of violence against the police.
Certainly by containing the situation and not going in, they've stopped a lot of people being injured. If you look at what happened in Oxford last week, you saw there the police going in very heavy-handed and really alienating the entire population, the entire community. And the police didn't do it in this particular situation. If they can match up their restraint with some diplomacy over the next few days, then the situation may be diffused.
But the confrontation has led others to declare a breakdown in law and order and an increasing strain on the police and their resources.
It shows that we have a very serious problem and an increasing problem in the region. The police have told me, both at the highest level in the police and with the local bobby, that they really are now unable to combat crime in our region. Crimes like burglaries, car thefts, and just protecting people who want to leave their homes in the evening. They say that they can't combat the increasing crime, and this is a very serious problem.
It's the future police strategy that's now under scrutiny. Last week, the Chief Constable of Northumbria Police said there were some cases when the velvet glove must be removed from the iron fist. It's clear that last night the glove stayed on.
The state has a history of social problems dating back to when it was built in the 1930s. It was hailed as an answer to the deprivation of the Bankside area above North Shields Fish Quay. Instead, it quickly developed its own problems of unemployment and poverty. Steve Sutton now reports.
There's no doubt in the minds of community leaders and academics who've studied Meadow Well and its problems that these scenes last night were the coming to fruition of seeds of discontent sown in the area more than 50 years ago. It was then that a run-down warren of shacks and cottages high above the North Shields Fish Quay, known locally as Bankside, was cleared away and residents moved into a brand new housing estate, the Ridges, or, as it became known, Meadow Well. A writer in the local press of the time observed that at last the slums were going, to be replaced by a bright and breezy new estate. But this was the reality of Meadow Well, ill-conceived, cheaply built, homes made to house the problems of Bankside, not necessarily to solve them. Those problems ran deep. Unemployment was high. One local newspaper even reported new residents were deloused before moving in, a fine introduction to their new environment. In 1969, riots took place in the centre of North Shields, nothing like the severity of last night's problems, but enough to make the police of the time pledge it would never happen again.
I don't think that this town is going to be set alight. I can only say that we are making preparations. And I hope that the people who might feel disposed to cause further trouble will have the good sense to see how pointless and stupid it all is and just not do it.
The problems were recognised then and were highlighted again 10 years ago when a census report on Meadow Well was published. Its conclusion, the estate had more deep-rooted problems than anywhere else. 10 years on, it's no different. Every pupil at this school, for example, receives a social services clothing grant.
3 or 4 years ago, when the social security cuts were brought into effect, then estates like Meadow Well, and the estates like Meadow Well are all over the country, they were hit hardest because many of the houses here are reliant on benefits, and when you're cutting some money from the economy that's already on the bottom, and then you've got the poll tax being implemented where people have to pay 20% of that poll tax. It might only be 20%, but it's an awful lot out of the wages.
Councillor Steve Byers, the Deputy Leader of North Tyneside Council, visited the estate this afternoon, but refused to accept that social deprivation was the cause of last night's rioting.
There can be no excuse for premeditated attacks as happened here yesterday evening. There are other estates in the region which have similar problems where we haven't seen acts of mindless vandalism like we witnessed here last night.
Whatever historically the problems are, Meadow Well must now begin repairing the damage, not just to its buildings, but its community. There are those who will say simply pull it down, but there are probably 1 or 2 people still around who remember them saying that about Bankside 60 years ago.
At tonight's main news headlines, the Prime Minister has called for a report into last night's riot in the Meadow Well estate on Tyneside. Local people now face the task of clearing up after a night of violence which left a trail of burnt-out shops and buildings. One North East MP says law and order has broken down. Doug Henderson says the police can no longer cope with Tyneside's rising crime rate. The Chief Constable of Northumbria denies that and has defended his officer's tactics in the riot.
And just before we go, a reminder of our Northern Line special where you can air your views on the Meadow Well disturbance. The number again, Tyneside 232 6565. That's 091 232 6565. And we look forward to hearing from you. In the meantime, Look North is back, as usual, tomorrow night at 6:30. Good night.